I went to the bank to close an old savings account and learned I had been paying for a safe deposit box I did not remember renting. The agreement carried my signature. My wife's signature was beside it. The date was October of 1999. A third authorized user was listed beneath us. My closest friend, Malcolm Price. Then the bank employee unfolded a yellow instruction card, clipped to the agreement. In Malcolm's handwriting, it said, "Do not open until Daniel knows." I had no idea who Daniel was. My name is Howard Larkin. I was 70 when this happened, retired from supervising water quality testing for the city of Albuquerque, New Mexico. My wife, Nora, was still alive. Malcolm was too, though we had barely spoken in 22 years. I asked the bank employee whether the box had ever been opened. She checked an old paper ledger several times. The first visit occurred 3 days after the rental agreement was signed. The second happened while I was inspecting treatment equipment in Nevada. Nora signed the access line. Malcolm signed as witness. A third entry appeared 2 months later under only Malcolm's initials. The final access was in 2004. Again, Nora. Again, Malcolm. I stared at the dates. In 1999, Nora and I were going through one of the hardest periods of our marriage. She said she was helping a friend whose husband had become ill. Malcolm stopped coming to our house soon afterward. I believed our friendship ended because I accused him of cutting corners on a city contract. Now I had a different possibility. My wife and my closest friend had maintained a lockbox under my name. They visited it together while I was away. They wrote instructions about a man I had never heard of, and they left the box open for more than 20 years. The bank employee asked whether I wanted to see the contents. I said yes. Then she handed me the original key envelope. Across the back, in Nora's handwriting, were 6 words. "If Howard opens this, tell him everything." The box was longer than I expected and almost empty. No cash. No jewelry. No will. Inside were 2 birth certificates, a social security card, school transcripts, several family photographs, a spiral notebook, and a stack of letters tied with cotton string. Every document belonged to Daniel Reeves. The photograph showed a thin teenage boy with dark hair. In one, he stood beside a man I recognized, Elliot Reeves. Elliot had been a close friend of ours in the 90s. He taught history at a public high school and coached debate. His wife died young. After that, he raised Daniel alone. Then Elliot suffered what people around us called a breakdown. He stopped teaching. He stopped answering calls. One day, he and Daniel disappeared. I believe they moved to Arizona. That was what Nora told me. The notebook began with Daniel's name and an address in Albuquerque. It was written during the fall of 1999, when he was 16. I turned to the first page. "Dad says people are trying to take me away because they think he is sick. I don't know who to trust. Mrs. Larkin says I should keep my papers somewhere Dad cannot destroy them." Mrs. Larkin, my wife. I looked at Nora. She sat in a small consultation room beside me, hands folded tightly in her lap. "You knew Daniel?" "Yes." "You put his records in our box?" "Yes." "You signed my name?" "No." "The signature is mine." "You signed it?" "I do not remember." "You signed a stack of bank papers after your mother died. You didn't read them." That sounded like me then. I had been settling my mother's estate and signing forms wherever Nora marked an X. "So you slipped this in?" "Yes." I felt something cold settle between us. "Why?" She looked at the documents. "Because Daniel needed a place Elliot could not reach." I asked whether Malcolm was Daniel's guardian. "No." "Then who was he protecting him from?" Nora's answer came slowly. "From his father." That was the moment the box stopped looking like proof of an affair. It became evidence of something more complicated. And Nora had still decided I could not be trusted with it. Elliot's crisis began after his wife died. At first, he became intensely protective of Daniel. He called the school several times a day. He checked Daniel's backpack. He read his mail. He accused teachers of turning the boy against him. Then he stopped paying bills and began talking about moving somewhere off the grid, though he had no plan and little money. Nora noticed before I did. She had been friends with Elliot's wife and still checked on Daniel occasionally. Malcolm noticed too. He lived nearby and repaired air conditioning systems. So Elliot called him whenever something broke. I knew Elliot was struggling. I believed families should manage family problems privately unless someone was in immediate danger. When Nora suggested contacting a social worker, I said, once you bring agencies into a house, you lose control of what happens next. I had seen city departments turn simple problems into months of forms and inspections. I thought I was being cautious. Nora heard something else. Daniel needed his birth certificate, school records, and identification to enroll elsewhere if Elliot moved suddenly or tried to keep him out of school. Elliot had begun tearing up mail he considered threatening. So Nora made copies. Malcolm helped retrieve originals from the house, while Elliot attended a medical appointment. You broke into his home? I asked. He gave me a key months earlier, Malcolm told me later. I used it for something he never expected. At the bank, Nora explained that Daniel's maternal aunt, Rebecca, lived in Santa Fe. She wanted temporary guardianship. Elliot refused. Rebecca planned a petition through family services, but she needed proof of Daniel's identity and school history. The safe deposit box kept those records out of Elliot's house. Why under my name? I asked. Because you already banked there. Because the box looked ordinary. Because Malcolm and I could be added without questions. And because if anyone discovered it, I took the blame. Nora did not deny that. Then I opened the bundle of letters. Most were from Rebecca to Daniel. One envelope was addressed to me. The postmark was 1999. It had never been opened. Across the front, Nora had written, "Not yet." Inside, Daniel had asked me for help. Daniel's letter was only 2 pages. Mr. Larkin, you always say rules matter because they keep people from making decisions when they are scared. My dad is scared all the time now. He says Aunt Rebecca is trying to steal me. Mrs. Larkin says there may be a hearing. She thinks you would know how to make sure nobody lies. Can I talk to you before anyone decides where I live? I read the last sentence twice. Daniel had wanted me involved. Nora had hidden the letter. I looked at her. You told me I could not know because I would report everything. That was part of it. He asked for me. I know. And you kept this from me. Yes. Her voice was quiet. That did not make it easier. Malcolm arrived at our house that evening after I called him. He looked older, heavier, and far less certain than the man I remembered. I placed a letter between us. Why didn't I get this? He glanced at Nora. That was her decision. You witnessed the box. Yes. You access a loan. Yes. You stopped speaking to me afterward. He rubbed his palms on his knees. I was ashamed. Malcolm explained the first major truth. There had never been anything romantic between him and Nora. They used the box to protect Daniel's records while Rebecca arranged legal guardianship. Malcolm drove Daniel to Santa Fe after Elliot agreed to a voluntary hospital admission, then changed his mind and tried to remove Daniel from school before Rebecca could arrive. The transfer happened quietly. No dramatic chase. No police at the door. Just a frightened teenager leaving school with one backpack, while his father sat in a hospital waiting room, believing they would return home together. Daniel needed time, Malcolm said, and you thought I would ruin that. You would have called Elliot. I would have asked what was happening. Same result. He was probably right. I disliked him for being right. But Daniel's unopened letter created a larger problem. If the plan succeeded, why was I never given a chance to answer him afterward? The box records showed another visit 2 months later. That was Malcolm's solo access. He said he retrieved Daniel's school transcripts and delivered them to Rebecca. By then, a judge had granted temporary guardianship with Elliot's consent. Elliot was receiving treatment. Daniel was safe. The immediate crisis was over. So, why didn't Nora give me the letter then? Malcolm looked toward the window. Because Elliot asked you about Daniel. I remembered. Elliot came to my office one afternoon. He looked exhausted and spoke too quickly. He said Rebecca had manipulated everyone. He said Nora and Malcolm had conspired against him. I did not believe the conspiracy. I did believe he had been treated unfairly. I told him I would call Nora and demand an explanation. Then I said, if Daniel wrote me, I'd tell him a father deserves to be heard before a family is broken apart. That sentence returned with painful clarity. Nora heard about it from Malcolm. She believed giving me the letter would cause me to contact Daniel immediately and pressure him to meet Elliot before he was ready. I wouldn't have forced him. You would have called, Nora said. Yes. You would have told him his father was suffering. Yes. You would have made a 16-year-old feel responsible for fixing it. I opened my mouth, then closed it. That was possible. I had always believed reconciliation should happen before anger hardened. I did not understand that sometimes distance is what lets fear settle enough for choice to become real. Nora said they planned to wait a month. Then Daniel asked him not to tell me. He was embarrassed, she said. He thought you would see him as ungrateful. I never would have. You already told Elliot's son owed his father a hearing. That was not exactly what I said. It was close enough. Daniel's unopened letter remained in the box. Then another letter appeared in 2001, and another in 2003, all addressed to me, all unopened. The box had stopped being a shelter for documents. It had become a place where my wife stored conversations she was afraid to let me have. The later letters were not pleas for help. Daniel wrote about college, a part-time job at a grocery store, Rebecca's patience, his father's slow improvement. In one letter, he said he had spoken to Elliot by telephone for the first time in almost a year. In another, he wrote, I understand now that Dad was sick. I also understand that I was afraid of him. Those truths don't cancel each other. He asked whether I still repaired the old irrigation controller at our church. He remembered helping me once. The letters were ordinary. That made Nora's choice harder to excuse. I asked why Daniel kept writing if I never answered. He thought you were deciding what to say, she replied. You let him believe I received them? At first again. She looked down. Eventually, Daniel asked directly whether I wanted contact. Nora wrote back, not in my name. In hers. She told him I had strong feelings about what happened and needed more time. That was a lie. I had no idea there was anything to need time for. I stood up from the table. You answered for me. Yes. You made him think I rejected him. I told myself I was preventing another confrontation. He was an adult by then. I know. Elliot was stable. I know. So, who were you protecting? She did not answer immediately. Then she said, us. By 2003, Nora and I had recovered from the strain surrounding Elliot and Daniel. She feared that telling me would reopen every argument about secrecy, family duty, and official involvement. She also feared I would contact Elliot and reveal how much he had done behind his back. Elliot and Daniel were rebuilding slowly. Nora did not want me inserting myself into that process. Some of that was concern. Some was cowardice. Malcolm's reason was simpler. He had used the box, removed documents without my knowledge, and helped hide Daniel's letters. If I learned the truth, he expected me to report his involvement in obtaining school records and perhaps expose him professionally. So he withdrew from our friendship before I could ask the right questions. The secret had once protected Daniel. Years later, it protected the people who created it. One photograph inside the box showed Daniel at 22, standing in front of the University of New Mexico with Rebecca. On the back, he had written, "For Mr. Larkin, tell him his box worked." That line hurt more than the letters. I had not knowingly protected anything, but Daniel believed I had. Nora confessed that he visited Albuquerque once in 2004. That matched the final box access. He came to retrieve his original birth certificate and Social Security card. He asked to see me. Nora told him I was out of town. I was not. I was at a city budget meeting until 5. He could have waited, I said. Yes. You sent him away. Yes. Why? Her eyes filled. Because by then, telling you meant telling you how many times I had already chosen for you. That was the second major truth. Nora did not intercept Daniel's attempts because he was still in danger. She continued because every new year increased the cost of confession. She had done something brave in 1999. She helped a teenager gain time, documents, and a safe adult advocate. Then she turned that courage into control. She decided when Daniel could reach me. She decided when I could learn the truth. She decided our marriage was safer without the conversation. Malcolm did the same from a different direction. He believed one dishonest month was justified. Then he protected his job and pride for 2 decades. And Daniel was not blameless either. As an adult, he could have called me directly. He admitted later that he preferred believing I was distant over risking hearing rejection in my own voice. Everyone chose a version of uncertainty they could tolerate. I called Daniel. The number came from the last letter in the box. A man answered. When I gave my name, he said nothing for several seconds. Then he asked, "Did Nora finally tell you?" "No." I looked at the open box on our dining table. The bank did. Daniel laughed once, softly. We agreed to meet in Santa Fe. Before we hung up, I asked whether he still had contact with his father. He said, until the end. Elliot had died 9 years earlier. I had lost the chance to hear his version too. Daniel was 42 when we met. He taught social studies at middle school and had 2 daughters. He carried no visible damage that I could point to and say, "There, that is what happened." That made the story more human. He told me Elliot eventually accepted treatment and moved into supported housing. Their relationship improved, then stalled, then improved again. Dad apologized, Daniel said. Then he explained too much. Then he learned to apologize without asking me to comfort him. I understood that. I asked why Daniel had wanted my help. "You were the most official person I knew." That is not usually a compliment. It was when I was 16. He believed I would protect the documents because I respected systems. He also feared I would force everyone into the same room before he felt safe. Both beliefs had been true. Daniel thanked me. I said, "I protected the box. I just didn't know what was inside." He smiled sadly. That may be why it worked. I told him about the unopened letters. He already knew some had not reached me. He did not know Nora had answered for me. That hurt him. Not dramatically. He simply looked down at his hands and said, "I thought you were choosing silence." "So did I?" We sat with that. Later, Malcolm joined us for coffee. The conversation was awkward. Daniel thanked him for the ride to Santa Fe. I told Malcolm I could understand why he helped. "I still can't understand why you let our friendship die." He answered, "Because losing it slowly felt easier than watching you end it." That was honest. It was not enough. Nora and I stayed married. We entered counseling at 70, which is humbling. Trust did not disappear. It became specific. I trusted her compassion. I no longer trusted her instinct to decide when I was ready for difficult truths. She accepted that without asking me to make it sound kinder. We closed the safe deposit box the following month. The bank employee placed the papers in a cardboard document case. Daniel kept his originals and the spiral notebook. I kept the letters. Nora asked what I planned to do with them. Read them. All of them. They were written to me. That answer was sharper than necessary. She nodded anyway. Malcolm removed his name from the account before the closure. His signature looked shakier than it had in 1999. The bank drilled the old lock because one key had been lost. The sound was brief. Metal against metal. Then the box that had held 20 years of decisions slid free. Daniel gave me one photograph before we left. It showed him at 16, sitting on Rebecca's porch with a school backpack between his feet. He looked frightened and relieved. On the back, in Nora's handwriting, were the words. First morning, nobody knew where to send him back. I carry that photograph in my jacket pocket now. Not because it excuses Nora. It does not. She protected Daniel when he needed adults willing to act. She also denied both of us the right to know each other later. Malcolm broke rules for a good reason. Then let fear turn one violation into years of silence. I had made their fear believable by treating procedure as morality and confrontation as honesty. None of us gets to keep only the generous part of our choices. Daniel visits occasionally. His daughters call me Mr. Howard. The first time, I corrected them and said they could call me Howard. Daniel laughed. You still need things labeled properly. Some habits survive. Nora and I sometimes talk about the box. Sometimes we stop because there is nowhere useful to take the argument. That is part of surviving too. The photograph remains in my pocket. The safe deposit box is empty now. Its lock has been replaced. Its number belongs to someone else. But when I reach for my wallet, my fingers sometimes touch the edge of that picture. A frightened boy, a backpack, a porch in Santa Fe. Proof that something good happened behind my back. And proof that good intentions can still leave someone standing outside a locked door